They don't hate you because you are weak, Mechavali once said quietly while staring into the dark street outside his window. They hate you because your existence reminds them of what they could never become. Most people spend their whole lives trying to be liked. They smile when they are angry. They agree when they want to refuse. They hide their success to protect other people's feelings. And slowly, they disappear. But one night, a young man asked Mechavali a dangerous question. Why does everyone secretly hate me? Mechavali looked at him for a long time before speaking. Because you still don't understand human nature. And what Mechavali explained that night changed the young man forever. Curiosity. The young man had a simple life. He never fought anyone, never insulted anyone, never betrayed anyone. Still, people avoided him. Friends mocked him behind his back. Relatives compared him to others. Co-workers smiled in front of him but celebrated his failures privately. At first, he thought he was imagining things, but then he started noticing patterns. Whenever he achieved something good, someone became cold. Whenever he looked confident, someone tried to humble him. Whenever he stayed silent, people became uncomfortable. The young man became confused. Why are people like this? He asked Mechavali. Mechavali slowly poured tea into a small cup and said, because most people do not want truth. They want comfort. The young man frowned. I still don't understand. Mechavali smiled faintly. That is because you think hate begins with anger. It does not. Hate begins with comparison. The room became silent. Mechavali leaned closer. The moment you improve your life, you accidentally become a mirror. And mirrors are dangerous. Manipulation. The young man listened carefully. Mechavali continued. Most people are fighting silent battles inside their minds. They feel insecure, invisible, weak. But instead of fixing themselves, they search for someone to blame. And when they see someone growing, they feel attacked, the young man asked softly. So they hate successful people? Mechavali shook his head. No. They hate reminders, he continued. If a lazy person sees someone disciplined, he feels exposed. If a coward sees someone confident, he feels smaller. If a weak mind sees someone focused, it feels threatened. The young man sat quietly. Suddenly, many memories returned to him. Moments where people discouraged him. Moments where friends laughed at his dreams. Moments where others acted supportive but secretly wanted him to fail. Mechavali noticed his expression. You finally see it. The young man nodded slowly. But why do they pretend to support me? Mechavali smiled. Because direct hate is risky. Hidden hate is safer. He continued speaking calmly. Human beings are masters of emotional manipulation. They rarely attack openly. Instead, they use subtle weapons. The young man asked, what kind of weapons? Mechavali raised one finger. Doubt? He raised another. Mockery? Another. Fake concern? And another. Silence. The young man looked confused. Mechavali explained, when people fear your growth, they plant fear inside your mind. They say things like, be realistic. You changed. Don't dream too big. Who do you think you are? The young man's eyes widened. He had heard those exact words before. Mechavali continued. They do not always want to destroy you. They simply want you to remain equal to them. The room suddenly felt heavy. The young man whispered, so people only love me when I stay small. Mechavali looked directly into his eyes. Yes, most people support your journey until your journey makes them feel left behind. The hidden game. Young man became uncomfortable. So nobody truly cares? Mechavali shook his head slowly. A few people do, but they are rare. Very rare, he continued. Most relationships are built on invisible agreements. The man asked, what agreements? Mechavali answered, I stay small. You stay comfortable. I remain average. You feel safe. I hide my potential. You continue feeling superior. The young man felt a chill in his body. Mechavali leaned back in his chair. The moment you break this invisible agreement, people change. The young man remembered how others behaved when he started improving himself. When he worked harder, people mocked him. When he became quieter, people called him arrogant. When he stopped chasing attention, people became nervous. Mechavali said calmly, because your transformation destroys their illusion. The young man asked, what illusion? That everyone is the same. Mechavali's voice became colder. Society rewards obedience, not individuality. The moment you think differently, you become dangerous. The young man finally asked the question hiding inside his heart. So what should I do? Should I become smaller again? Mechavali stared at him silently for a long time. Then he laughed softly. That's exactly what they want. The young man stayed silent. Mechavali continued. Listen carefully. The world teaches you something very strange. It tells you to be yourself, but punishes you the moment you actually become yourself. The young man felt the truth of those words immediately. Mechavali stood up and walked toward the window. Outside, rain slowly touched the empty streets. Then Mechavali said something the young man never forgot. The greatest manipulation is not hatred. It is making you hate yourself. The young man froze. Mechavali continued, if they can destroy your confidence, they never need to fight you. If they can fill your mind with doubt, you will destroy yourself for them. The room became completely silent. The young man finally understood. The problem was never the world. The real battle was happening inside his own mind. Every insult had slowly become his inner voice. Every mockery became fear. Every rejection became insecurity. And without realizing it, he started shrinking himself. Mechavali turned back toward him. You became your own prison. The young man lowered his head. It was true. He stopped speaking confidently, stopped sharing ideas, stopped trying, stopped dreaming loudly. Not because he failed, but because he feared judgment. Mechavali sat back down calmly. That is how society controls people, not through chains, through fear. The young man asked quietly, so what happens if I stop caring? Mechavali smiled. Then you become free. But freedom has a price. The young man listened carefully. When you stop needing approval, you lose many people. When you stop explaining yourself, you become misunderstood. When you stop acting weak, you become intimidating. The young man whispered, so loneliness is part of growth? Mechavali nodded slowly. Yes. Every powerful transformation begins with isolation. The young man felt sadness in his chest. Mechavali noticed it immediately. You fear being alone? The young man nodded. Mechavali spoke softly. Most people would rather be accepted than respected. That is why they betray themselves. The young man remained silent. Mechavali continued. They wear fake personalities, fake smiles, fake opinions, because they fear rejection. But Mechavali's eyes became sharper. The person who accepts loneliness becomes unstoppable. The young man asked, why? Mechavali answered, because he can no longer be controlled. Hours passed. The rain outside became heavier. The young man finally looked calmer. Then he asked one last question. So if they all hate me, what should I do? Mechavali smiled faintly. Nothing. The young man looked confused again. Mechavali continued, "You waste energy trying to change people's feelings. That's impossible. People see you through the lens of their own insecurity. If they hate themselves, they will eventually hate you too." The young man sat silently. Then Mechavali gave him the final lesson. Never shrink yourself to fit inside someone else's comfort. Never beg for acceptance. Never explain your ambition to people committed to staying average. The young man felt something changing inside him. For the first time, he stopped feeling guilty for wanting more from life. Mechavali stood up slowly. "One day," he said, "you will realize something important." The young man waited. The people who secretly hated your growth were also secretly studying you. The young man frowned. "What does that mean?" Mechavali smiled. "People often attack what they secretly admire." The room became silent again. Then Mechavali spoke one final sentence before leaving. "If they all hate you, good. It means you finally stopped living for them."